The call came at 10:47 on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Robert was in an important meeting when his phone vibrated for the fifth consecutive time. He ignored the first 4 calls, but something in the insistent pattern of those attempts made his stomach tighten. It was Grace, the employee who had taken care of the house and little Emma since the girl was born. Grace never called during working hours. Never. When he finally answered, stepping away from the conference table under the irritated looks of his colleagues, the voice on the other end of the line was loaded with a desperation that froze his blood. "Mr. Robert, please, you need to come back now. Right now. She's going to hurt Emma. I can't protect the girl alone anymore." The phone almost slipped from his hand. Grace was crying, something he had never seen in the 15 years she had worked for the family. The woman had always been strong, balanced, the rock of the house after Laura died in the car accident 2 years earlier. It was Grace who held Emma when the 4-year-old cried for her mother. It was Grace who kept the routine functioning while Robert drowned himself in work so he wouldn't feel the pain. "What are you talking about? Who's going to hurt my daughter?" "Veronica, sir. Please believe me this time. I know you didn't want to hear it before, but now it's worse. Much worse. Emma hasn't eaten properly in 3 days. She's afraid to leave her room. Yesterday I found her favorite doll destroyed in the trash, all cut up. And this morning..." Grace's voice faltered, choked with sobs. "This morning I saw bruises on her arm. Finger marks, Mr. Robert. Adult finger marks on the arm of a 6-year-old child." Robert felt the ground sway beneath his feet. Veronica. His girlfriend for 8 months. The woman who had brought light back into that dark house. The successful, elegant lawyer who knew exactly what to say to make him feel like he might be able to be happy again. The woman Emma initially adored, who played with the girl, who read her stories to sleep. Or at least that's what he saw when he was home, which was happening less and less in recent weeks. "Grace, you're exaggerating. Emma must have gotten hurt playing. Kids fall, they bump into things. I know the difference between an accident and what I'm seeing, sir. I've worked with children my whole life. And I know when a child is terrified in her own home." There was a firmness in Grace's voice now, a determination that pierced his denial. But accepting what she was saying would mean admitting something terrible. It would mean admitting he had failed Emma. Again. "I'll talk to Veronica when I get home tonight." "No. You don't understand. It has to be now." She changed the password on Emma's bedroom. Locked the girl inside an hour ago, saying she was being punished for lying about being hungry. "I heard Emma crying, begging to get out. When I tried to intervene, Veronica told me to stay in my place and said that if I called you again, she'd fire me on the spot." Robert's chest tightened. Part of him still wanted to believe there was a misunderstanding. Veronica could be firm sometimes, yes, but that was because she cared about education, about boundaries. She had explained that to him several times. Emma was getting spoiled, too pampered after losing her mother. She needed discipline, structure. That was what Veronica said, and he agreed. It made sense. But finger marks? Locking a child in her room? Destroying her belongings? "I can't leave now, Grace. I'm closing a $1 million deal. If I walk out in the middle of this meeting..." "So you're telling me that a contract is worth more than your daughter's safety?" The question cut like a blade. Robert closed his eyes, pressing his fingers against his temples. When had everything gotten so complicated? When had being an absent father become his new normal? "I'll talk to her. I'll call now and..." Calling won't solve it. You need to see it with your own eyes. You need to see what happens when you're not here. Because I swear, Mr. Robert, if you don't come now, I'm calling the police. I'm calling Child Protective Services. I'll do whatever it takes to get that woman away from Emma. It was a threat. Grace was threatening him. The woman who had always been loyal, discreet, who had never questioned his decisions, was challenging his authority. Anger bubbled in his chest, but with it came something heavier. Fear. Fear that Grace was right. Fear that he had been blind. Fear that in his desperate attempt to rebuild some semblance of a normal family, he had exposed his daughter to a danger he should have seen. "Give me 20 minutes, he said, his voice coming out hoarse. "I'm coming home now." "Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'll stay outside her room. I won't let anything happen until you arrive." Robert hung up and returned to the meeting room, mumbling a vague excuse about a family emergency. His colleagues' faces showed thinly veiled frustration, but he didn't care. He grabbed his jacket, his keys, and almost ran out. In the car, while breaking every speed limit, his mind raced. He started piecing together the last few months, looking for signs he should have seen. Emma had lost weight, yes. But Veronica said it was because she was regulating the girl's diet better. Less sugar, more vegetables. It made sense. Emma had also become quieter, less energetic. But that was natural after losing her mother, wasn't it? And what about the times he came home and found Emma crying, and Veronica patiently explained that the girl had thrown a tantrum, broken some rule, been disrespectful? He always believed Veronica. Always. Grace tried to warn him before. 3 weeks ago, she asked to talk privately and mentioned she was worried about Veronica's behavior when he wasn't home. Robert cut the conversation short, irritated. Said Grace was being jealous, that she was having trouble accepting another woman taking on a maternal role in Emma's life. Veronica had said that could happen, that employees sometimes get possessive of the children they care for. And what if he had listened? What if that had been the moment to stop all this? Robert's hands trembled on the wheel. The mansion in the Chicago suburbs was only 15 minutes from the office, but every second felt like an eternity. He thought about calling Veronica, but something stopped him. If Grace was right, warning Veronica that he was coming back would only give her time to rebuild her facade. When he finally pulled into the garage, it was 11:06. 19 minutes since Grace's call. The house was too quiet. He entered through the kitchen door, expecting to find Grace or hear some sound, but there was only a heavy, oppressive silence. Then he heard it. Coming from the second floor. Veronica's voice, but not the sweet, melodious voice he knew. It was something cold, venomous, filled with cruelty that made his hairs stand on end. "You think your father is going to believe you? No one believes bratty little lying children. I'm the adult here. I'm the one he loves. And you? You're just a pathetic reminder of what he lost." Robert climbed the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding so hard it felt ready to explode. He reached the hallway on the second floor and saw Grace leaning against the wall near Emma's room, her face wet with tears, her hands trembling. The bedroom door was slightly open. He approached quietly and looked through the gap. What he saw stole all the air from his lungs. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Tell us in the comments what you thought and from which city or country you're watching. Your participation is very important. Veronica was crouched in front of Emma, gripping the girl's face tightly, her fingers digging into the child's cheeks. Emma was curled against the wall, her small body trembling, tears streaming silently down her face. She made no sound. Didn't cry out loud. It was as if she had learned that making noise only made things worse. Robert shoved the door open with force, the sound echoing against the walls of the pink bedroom that once had been a refuge of joy. Veronica released Emma's face immediately, standing up with impressive speed. The transformation was instant. The expression of cruelty dissolved, replaced by a mask of surprise and concern. "Robert, you're home? What a wonderful surprise," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I was just talking to Emma about her behavior this morning." Emma remained curled against the wall, her wide eyes fixed on her father. There was something in that look that shattered Robert's heart into pieces. It wasn't hope. It was terror. Terror that he wouldn't believe her. Again. Talking. The word came out as a growl. "You call that talking?" Veronica blinked, tilting her head with that innocent, confused expression she mastered so well. "Of course, darling." Emma was having a very serious tantrum. She refused to eat the healthy breakfast I made, threw the plate on the floor, and said horrible things to me and to Grace. "I was only explaining that this kind of behavior has consequences." Robert looked at Emma. The girl had always been full of energy, laughter, and life. The child before him was a shadow. Too thin, too pale, her eyes sunken and surrounded by dark circles. How had he not seen it? How had he let it become so obvious? "Emma," he said, his voice trembling. "Come here, sweetheart." The girl didn't move. Her eyes quickly darted to Veronica and then back to the floor. She was assessing the risk, calculating whether it was safe to obey her father with the stepmother present. "Emma now," Robert repeated, holding out his arms. Finally, the girl moved. But instead of running into her father's arms like she used to, she walked slowly, each step cautious, like a wounded animal approaching something that could either save it or hurt it even more. When she was close enough, Robert lifted her into his arms. Emma was far too light. She weighed almost nothing. He could feel the protruding bones beneath her clothes. When was the last time he had really hugged his daughter? When was the last time he truly paid attention? "Show Daddy your arm," he said gently. Emma hesitated, her eyes seeking Veronica again. The woman stood by the dresser, arms crossed, a faint smile on her face. Confident. Controlled. "You can show him, sweetheart. It's okay." With trembling hands, Emma pulled up her sleeve. What Robert saw made bile rise in his throat. Purple and yellow bruises marked the thin arm of the girl. Finger marks. Unmistakable. Some seemed recent, others were already fading. "My God," he whispered. "Robert, I can explain," Veronica began, taking a step forward. "Emma has been hurting herself. It's an attention-seeking mechanism. I read about it. Children who lose a parent sometimes develop self-destructive behaviors to get attention. I was trying to help, trying to make her stop before she hurt herself seriously." The explanation came out smooth, rational, wrapped in convincingly maternal concern. For a second, just a second, Robert almost believed her. Because believing was easier than accepting the truth. Believing meant he hadn't completely failed as a father. But then Emma spoke. Her voice was so low it was almost inaudible. "She hit me, Daddy. She always hits me when you're not here." "Emma. What a horrible thing to say." Veronica exclaimed, placing a hand on her chest in theatrical shock. "Robert, do you see what I'm talking about? She invents these terrible stories. I would never lay a finger on that child. I love Emma as if she were my own daughter." "You're lying." Grace appeared in the doorway, her presence solid and protective. "I saw it. I saw you yesterday twisting Emma's arm because she spilled juice by accident. I saw you the day before locking her in the dark closet for 2 hours because she didn't want to eat the food you made. I saw you last week throwing away all the presents her mother gave her, saying Emma needed to forget that weak woman." The silence that followed was sepulchral. Veronica stared at Grace with a hatred so pure and intense it seemed to burn the air between them. "You're fired," Veronica said coldly. "Pack your things and get out of my house now." "Your house." Robert felt the anger explode inside him like a volcano. "This is not your house, Veronica. This is my house. And you will never set foot here again." The mask finally fell. The woman standing before him was not the person he thought he knew. Veronica's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "You're really going to believe this insignificant maid and this manipulative child? I'm a lawyer, Robert. I know exactly how these things work. It's their word against mine. And who do you think a judge is going to believe? The successful professional with an impeccable reputation or the domestic worker who is clearly jealous of our relationship?" "Get out," Robert said, his voice low and dangerous. "Get out now before I call the police." Veronica laughed. A cold, calculated laugh. "Call them. Call the police. I'll say that I got here and found this child hurt. I'll say I suspect Grace. After all, she's the one who spends the most time alone with Emma. Who do you think they'll investigate first? And while they investigate, I'll file a defamation lawsuit. I'll destroy that woman's life. I'll make sure she never works with children again, anywhere." Grace paled, but didn't step back. Robert felt Emma trembling in his arms. The girl had buried her face in his neck, her silent sobs shaking her small body. "Why?" Robert asked, genuinely confused. "Why do this? If you didn't want to be around Emma, why not just break up with me?" "Why?" Veronica repeated, as if the question were absurd. "Because you have money, Robert. Because you have status. Because I spent years building a career, always being the smartest, the most dedicated, and still watching mediocre men being promoted above me. Marrying you was my shortcut. But that spoiled child was always in the way. Always needing attention, always crying for her dead mother, always making you feel guilty for working. So you tried to break her," Robert said, the realization hitting him like a punch. "I tried to educate her. Tried to make her into something useful instead of an emotional deadweight. But she's weak, just like her mother was. Laura was pathetic too, always complaining that you worked too much, always wanting more time, more attention. At least she had the decency to get out of the way. Robert gently set Emma down, signaling to Grace to take her. The employee immediately embraced the girl, leading her out of the room. He waited until he heard their steps going down the stairs. When he turned back to Veronica, there was something different in his eyes. Something that made her step back. You have 5 minutes to gather your things and leave. If you're still here after that, I will drag you out myself. And about your threats? Go ahead. Try. I'll hire the best lawyers in the state. I'll use every cent I have to make sure you pay for what you did to my daughter. Veronica assessed the situation. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. She tried one last tactic. Robert, love, you're letting these two manipulate you. You love me. You said I brought light back into your life. Don't throw that away because of misunderstandings. Out, he repeated, pointing to the door. Now. Realizing she had lost, Veronica grabbed her purse and walked toward the door. But before leaving, she turned one last time. You're going to regret this. When you're alone again, drowning in work and guilt, when that child grows up and blames you for not being the father she needed, you'll remember me. You'll remember that I was the only one willing to stay. She left, the sound of her heels echoing down the stairs, followed by the slam of the door. Robert stood frozen in the empty bedroom for long minutes after Veronica left, his legs shaking so badly he had to brace himself against the dresser. The reality of what had happened, of what he had allowed to happen, collapsed over him with crushing force. His daughter had been tortured, abused, psychologically destroyed, and he hadn't seen it. Worse, he had chosen not to see it. When he finally went downstairs, he found Emma sitting on the living room sofa, curled up in Grace's lap. The housekeeper hummed a soft lullaby, rocking gently, just as she had done when Emma was a baby. The girl was silent now, her glazed eyes fixed on some distant point. Robert approached slowly, each step heavy with guilt. He didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry" felt far too small for the enormity of what he had done. How could anyone apologize for betraying a child's trust so completely? "Emma," he began, his voice hoarse. "Sweetheart, The girl shrank against Grace, turning her face away from him. The rejection hurt more than any punch could. He deserved that. He deserved much worse. Grace looked at him with an expression that mixed compassion and disappointment. She didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. "I warned you. I tried to tell you. And you didn't want to listen. Grace, I don't even know where to begin asking for forgiveness. For you and for her. I failed as a father. I failed as a man. I was blind, arrogant, stupid." "Mr. Robert," Grace interrupted softly. "Right now is not the time for self-punishment. It's time for action. Emma needs professional help. She needs a doctor, a psychologist. And you need to decide whether you're truly ready to be present this time." He nodded, swallowing the knot in his throat. Grace was right. Regret could wait. Emma couldn't. "I'll call her pediatrician now. And I'll find the best child therapist in Chicago. Money is not an issue." "Money was never the issue, sir," Grace said, and there was a firmness in her voice he rarely heard. "The issue is time. Presence. Choosing to be here instead of in yet another meeting, another contract, another negotiation." The words cut deep because they were true. Robert had convinced himself that working to exhaustion was his way of taking care of his daughter, providing for her, securing her future, building an empire she would inherit one day. But Emma didn't need an empire. She needed a father. "I'll change," he said. "I promise." "Don't promise me. Promise her. And then follow through." Robert spent the rest of the afternoon making calls. First to her pediatrician, Dr. Harrison, a 60-year-old man who had cared for Emma since birth. When Robert explained the situation, he heard a long sigh on the other end of the line. "I had concerns," Dr. Harrison admitted. "At the last appointment 3 weeks ago, I noticed Emma was underweight. She was quieter, less responsive. I tried talking to your girlfriend about it, since she was the one who brought the girl, but she assured me everything was fine. She said it was just an adjustment phase." Another ignored sign. Another person who had tried to warn him something was wrong. Can you come to my house today? I need you to examine her thoroughly. I need documentation of everything. I'll be there in an hour. The next call was to Catherine Mills, a child psychologist specializing in trauma with an office in downtown Chicago. Her secretary said she wasn't taking new patients, but when Robert explained the urgency, Catherine herself took the call. Mr. Thompson, she said, her voice professional but warm. I understand your daughter has experienced abuse. I can fit her in tomorrow morning at 9. But you need to understand something important. Child therapy is not quick. It isn't an immediate fix. It's a long, delicate process, and it will require total family commitment. I understand. I'll be there. And I'll attend every session you think is necessary. This isn't about you, Mr. Thompson. It's about Emma. The focus must always be on her. Another person putting him in his place. Another person showing how far he had lost perspective. When Dr. Harrison arrived, Grace took Emma to her room. The doctor spent nearly 2 hours examining the girl, documenting every bruise, every scratch, asking gentle questions that Emma answered with monosyllables or simple nods. When he finished, Dr. Harrison came downstairs with a grim expression. There are clear signs of physical abuse and severe nutritional neglect. Emma is 10 kilos under the ideal weight for her age. She shows signs of chronic dehydration. The bruises are consistent with repeated aggression. There are also indicators of extreme psychological stress. Robert sank into a chair, hands covering his face. I'll prepare a full report. You'll need it if you decide to take legal action. I'm going to sue her. I'm going to make her pay for everything. Good. But remember, Robert, the most important thing right now is Emma's recovery. She needs to feel safe again. To trust the adults around her. That won't happen overnight. After the doctor left, Robert slowly climbed to Emma's room. Grace was sitting in the rocking chair near the window, and Emma lay on the bed, clutching the only toy Veronica hadn't destroyed, a worn teddy bear that Laura had given her on her last birthday before she died. May I come in? Robert asked from the doorway. Emma didn't respond, but she also didn't say no. He took that as permission and entered, sitting on the floor beside the bed, purposely positioning himself lower than her, something he had once read about not intimidating traumatized children. Emma, I know you don't want to talk to me right now. And that's okay. You don't have to talk. But I need you to know a few things. The girl kept staring at the teddy bear, her small fingers stroking the worn fur. First, nothing that happened was your fault. Nothing. You did nothing wrong. The one who did wrong was me. I should have protected you, and I didn't. I should have believed you, and I didn't. I should have listened to Grace, and I didn't. I failed you in every possible way. A tear slid down Emma's cheek, absorbed by the teddy bear's fur. Second, Veronica will never come back. Never. She will never be able to hurt you again. I will do everything to make sure of that. She said you were going to send me away, Emma whispered, her voice so low Robert almost didn't hear it. She said you were tired of me. That I was a burden. That you were going to send me to an orphanage. The pain that shot through Robert's chest was physical. He had to clench his teeth not to cry right there. She lied, sweetheart. She lied about everything. I would never send you away. Never. You are the most important thing in my life. The only thing that truly matters. And I was an idiot for letting you forget that. You said I was being spoiled, Emma continued, still not looking at him. You said Veronica was right. That I needed discipline. Every word was a fair accusation. Every memory a testimony of his failures. I know. And I was wrong. Completely wrong. You weren't being spoiled. You were scared. You were asking for help in the only way you knew how. And I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. Grace quietly stood up and left the room, giving them privacy. Robert stayed there, sitting on the floor beside the bed, watching his daughter hold the teddy bear as if it were the only solid thing left in a world that had collapsed. Emma, I'm going to make you a promise. And this time, I will keep it. I will be here. Every day. I'll take you to school, I'll pick you up. I'll have dinner with you every night. I'll read you stories before bed. I'll be present. Truly present. What if you change your mind? Her voice was loaded with a sadness no 6-year-old should ever know. What if you find another girlfriend who doesn't like me? There won't be another girlfriend. Not for a long time. And if one day, far in the future, there is someone, you will meet her slowly. And if you don't like her, if you don't feel comfortable, that person won't stay. Do you understand? You are my priority. Always. Emma finally turned her face to look at him. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there was something there, a tiny spark of hope fighting not to be extinguished. 3 days later, Robert was in his lawyer's office, Michael Chun, with a thick folder of documents. Dr. Harrison's medical report, photographs of the bruises, records of text messages where Grace had tried to warn him about Veronica's behavior, and something else. Something he had discovered the night before that changed everything. You won't believe what I found, Robert said, pushing a laptop across the table. Michael adjusted his glasses and looked at the screen. It was an obscure online forum, difficult to access. The posts dated back 6 months, shortly before Veronica entered Robert's life. What is this? It's a forum where people share strategies for marrying wealthy targets. I found Veronica's profile. She planned this, Michael. All of it. From the beginning. Michael began reading, his expression growing darker with each line. Veronica's posts were detailed, calculated, cold. She described Robert as a vulnerable widower with an estimated 8-digit net worth, and Emma as an obstacle that needs to be psychologically neutralized. There were instructions on how to appear maternal at first, how to gain the child's trust, and then how to systematically break her spirit so she would stop competing for attention. Other forum users had given advice, shared tactics, celebrated their own successes in manipulating families. My God, Michael murmured. This is premeditation. This isn't just abuse, it's conspiracy. There's more. I managed to access her bank accounts through a private investigator. Veronica was in debt. Deeply in debt. Student loans, maxed out credit cards, she was being sued by 3 different creditors. She needed this marriage. And Emma was in the way. Michael leaned back in his chair, processing the information. Robert, with this evidence, we can destroy her. Sue for child abuse, fraud, emotional extortion. She could lose her law license. She could even face jail time. That's exactly what I want. But you need to be prepared. She's going to fight. And she's going to fight dirty. People like her always fight dirty. Robert was prepared. In the last 3 days, while taking care of Emma, while taking her to sessions with Catherine Mills, while slowly rebuilding her shattered trust, he had become someone else. The executive who prioritized deals above everything had died the moment he saw his daughter cowering against that wall. Let her fight. I have resources. I have evidence. And I have something she never had, people who genuinely care about me and are willing to testify to the truth. The next morning, Veronica received the lawsuit notice. Robert wasn't there to see it, but his lawyer said she showed up at his office 2 hours later, trying to negotiate. She offered to return everything you gave her, Michael reported over the phone. The jewelry, the expensive clothes, even that car you bought. She said it was all a misunderstanding, that she's willing to go to therapy, that she learned her lesson. And what did you say? I said you want nothing from her. You want justice. And that we're taking this to the fullest extent. Veronica's response was quick and vicious. She filed a counteraction, claiming that Robert was a negligent father, that he worked too much, that he left his daughter in the care of an unqualified maid. She claimed that any discipline she had used was because she was genuinely concerned for Emma's well-being. She also leaked a distorted version of the story to the press. Headlines began appearing: millionaire executive accuses girlfriend of abuse after messy breakup, and lawyer denies allegations, says she was scapegoat for absent father. Robert was prepared for that too. He called a press conference. Something he had never done before. Something that went against every instinct for privacy he had. On the morning of the conference, Grace helped him choose a tie. Emma was at school, shielded from all this, under the supervision of security guards Robert had hired. You're doing the right thing, sir, Grace said, adjusting the knot of his tie. The truth needs to be told. I'm terrified, Robert admitted. What if this makes things worse? What if exposing all this hurts Emma even more? Emma is already hurt. What will heal her is seeing her father fight for her. Knowing that her voice matters. That when she asked for help and wasn't heard the first time, you didn't give up. You corrected the mistake. The press room was packed. Cameras, microphones, reporters hungry for a sensational story. Robert stepped up to the podium, his hands trembling slightly. Beside him, on a large screen, the evidence began to appear. The medical photos of the bruises, appropriately edited to protect Emma's identity. Excerpts from Dr. Harrison's report. And finally, screenshots of the online forum where Veronica had planned everything. My name is Robert Thompson. And I am here today because I failed as a father. The silence in the room was absolute. For months, while I was busy building businesses and closing deals, my 6-year-old daughter was being systematically abused in her own home. By someone I brought into our lives. By someone I trusted. He told everything. Every detail. The ignored calls from Grace. The signs he didn't want to see. The conversation with Emma where she tried to ask for help and he didn't believe her. He didn't spare himself. He didn't try to look better than he was. I'm exposing this publicly for 2 reasons. First, because other children may be going through the same thing. And parents need to know that abusers are experts in manipulation. They don't look like monsters. They look like normal, charming, trustworthy people. And second, because I want my daughter to know that I believe her. Finally. And that I will fight for her with everything I have. When questions started, they were brutal. Reporters asked why he took so long to act. Why he didn't believe Grace from the beginning. Whether he considered himself complicit in the abuse due to negligence. Yes, Robert answered the last question, his voice firm. I was complicit. Through omission, through arrogance, through sheer blindness. And I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But now I'm using my privilege, my resources, and my platform to ensure Veronica answers for her crimes. And to encourage other parents to listen. Really listen when something is wrong. The conference ended in heavy silence. But when Robert checked his phone afterwards, there were hundreds of messages. From parents thanking him for speaking openly. From survivors of child abuse saying they felt seen. From child protection organizations offering support. And there was a message from an unknown number. When he opened it, his blood ran cold. It was from a woman named Jennifer. She said she had been married to Veronica's brother years ago. She said Veronica had done the same thing to her son, an 8-year-old boy. That she had tried to report it at the time, but Veronica used her legal contacts to make the accusations disappear. Her family didn't have the resources to fight. I have evidence saved, the message said. Diaries, recordings. I was waiting for the day someone with enough power was willing to confront her. Please let me help. Robert forwarded the message to Michael immediately. This changed everything. It wasn't an isolated case. It was a pattern. Veronica had done this before. And she would likely do it again if not stopped. In court, weeks later, when Jennifer testified about what Veronica had done to her son, when she presented the evidence she had saved for years waiting for justice, when other victims began to come forward encouraged by the public exposure of the case, Veronica's defense collapsed. The judge, a stern 60-year-old woman, looked at Veronica with an expression of deep contempt. In my 30 years of career, I have rarely seen a case of abuse so calculated, so premeditated, so devoid of remorse. You used your education, your position, your intelligence not to help, but to destroy vulnerable children. You are a danger to society. The sentence was harsh. 5 years in prison. Permanent loss of her license to practice law. A lifelong restraining order prohibiting contact with minors. And a substantial compensation to be deposited into a fund for the victims. When the sentence was read, Veronica finally showed emotion. But it wasn't remorse. It was anger. Pure anger at being caught, at losing, at her perfect plan being dismantled. 6 months after the trial, Robert was sitting on a bench at Lincoln Park, watching Emma play on the slide. It was a sunny Saturday morning, and for the first time in a long while, he hadn't thought about work once since waking up. Emma slid down the slide laughing, her dark hair flying in the wind. She had gained back weight, her cheeks were rosy again, and that empty look had been replaced by sparks of genuine joy. Not every day. There were still nightmares. Still moments when she froze from unexpected triggers. But she was getting better. Slowly, painfully, but visibly better. Grace was sitting beside Robert, knitting a scarf for Emma. She had refused the substantial raise Robert offered after the trial, saying she had done nothing more than her duty. But she accepted paid vacation time and a robust retirement fund. "She's different today," Grace commented, watching Emma run to the swing. Catherine said it's a good sign. Every day she can play without fear is a victory. The therapy sessions with Catherine Mills had become an essential part of the routine. Twice a week, Robert took Emma to the cozy office in downtown Chicago. At first, the girl didn't speak. She only drew. Dark, violent drawings that broke Robert's heart. Houses on fire. Faceless figures. Children alone in empty spaces. But little by little, the drawings changed. Colors began to appear. Animals. Flowers. And finally, 3 weeks ago, Emma drew something that made Catherine smile, a family. A tall man, a small girl, and a woman in an apron. Robert, Emma, and Grace. "Mr. Robert," Grace said, placing her knitting on her lap. "May I ask you a personal question?" "Always." "Do you regret it? Exposing everything publicly? The consequences that came with it?" It was a good question. The public exposure had cost dearly. Robert lost contracts with clients who considered the scandal harmful to their own images. Lost friends who believed Veronica's version. Dealt with invasive media attention for months. But he also gained something priceless. Not even a bit. Because that, he pointed to Emma, who was now playing with other children in the sandbox, that wouldn't be happening if I had chosen to protect my reputation instead of doing the right thing. Grace nodded, returning to her knitting. And because, Robert continued, other children were saved. After the story became public, do you know how many reports of abuse were made? How many parents contacted us saying they recognized signs they were ignoring? It was true. The foundation Robert created with part of the settlement, called Voices That Matter, had already helped 42 families identify and leave abusive situations. It offered free legal support, therapy for children and parents, and training programs for educators to identify warning signs. Jennifer, the woman who testified against Veronica, had become the executive director of the foundation. Her son, now a teenager and in recovery, participated in support groups for young survivors. "Daddy! Daddy, look!" Emma shouted from across the park, waving enthusiastically. Robert stood and walked over to her. Emma had built an elaborate sandcastle, with towers and bridges made of sticks. "It's for Mommy," Emma said, her voice low but firm. "Catherine said I can make pretty things to remember her. That I don't need to forget." Robert's heart tightened. For months, Emma hadn't mentioned Laura. Veronica had tried to erase the memory of her mother completely, telling Emma that talking about Laura was disrespectful to her father, that it caused pain, that weak people stayed stuck in the past. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Your mom would love it." "Do you think she's proud of me?" Emma asked, looking up with those big eyes that were exact copies of Laura's. "I'm absolutely sure. She has always been proud of you. From the day you were born until now. And she'll keep being proud every day of your life." Emma smiled, returning to work on the castle. Robert stayed there, crouched beside her, helping reinforce the sand walls. It was a simple moment. Ordinary. But for him, who had missed so many of these moments, it was extraordinary. When they returned home in the late afternoon, Emma was tired but happy. Grace made her favorite dinner, homemade macaroni and cheese, and the three of them ate together in the kitchen, laughing at a silly story Emma told about her school friend. At bedtime, Robert read a story to Emma. It was a ritual he hadn't missed again. Not one night. Even when exhausted, even when he had important calls, he was always there at 8 o'clock to read. "Dad," Emma said as he was closing the book, "you're never going away again, right? You'll never let someone bad into our house again." It was a question she often asked. Catherine explained it was part of rebuilding safety. Emma needed the reassurance repeated until she finally believed it. "Never again, sweetheart. I learned my lesson. The most important thing in the world is you. No job, no money, no relationship matters more than your safety and happiness. And Grace stays too. Grace stays for as long as she wants to. And I'll do everything I can so she wants to stay forever." Emma nodded, satisfied. She grabbed her teddy bear, the same one Laura had given her, and snuggled under the blankets. Dad, can I tell you a secret? Always. I was really scared that you wouldn't believe me. That you would stay on her side forever. But you came back. You saved me. Robert had to swallow the tears threatening to fall. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never need to be saved again. Because you'll be safe from the start. That night, after Emma slept, Robert sat in the office he rarely used anymore. On the walls, where there once were diplomas and professional awards, there were now photos. Emma as a baby. Emma with Laura. Emma laughing at the park. Emma on her first day of therapy, still scared. Emma a week ago, with a genuine smile. He thought about everything that had happened. The blindness that nearly cost him his daughter. Grace's courage, who risked her job to do the right thing. Emma's strength, who survived the unthinkable. And the responsibility he now carried to use his experience to help others. The phone rang. It was Michael, his lawyer. Robert, I have news. Veronica tried to appeal the sentence. It was denied. And there's more. 3 other victims came forward. Cases from years ago that she managed to bury. With their testimony and the new evidence, the prosecutor is considering adding years to her sentence. Good. The longer she's away from children, the better. When he hung up, Robert opened his laptop and started writing. Every week, he wrote articles for the Foundation's blog. He shared his journey, his mistakes, his lessons. He received hundreds of messages from grateful parents, survivors who related, professionals seeking guidance. The last sentence he wrote that night was, "Our children speak in ways that go beyond words. And our only obligation is to listen." If you made it this far, thank you so much for following this story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and tell us in the comments what you thought and from which city or country you're watching. Your interaction helps bring this important message to more people. 3 years later, on a sunny spring morning, Robert sat in the audience of a small school watching Emma present a project about heroism. She was 9 now, healthy, confident, and openly talked about her journey in support groups for children. When it was her turn to present, Emma stepped onto the stage without fear. "My hero doesn't wear a cape," she began, her voice clear. "My hero is my dad, who learned to listen when he made a mistake. And my heroine is Grace, who never gave up on me even when no one believed her. They taught me that real heroes are people who choose to do the right thing, even when it's hard." Robert felt Grace squeeze his hand. The 2 of them were crying, but they were good tears. Tears of pride, healing, hope. The story didn't have a fairy tale ending. There were still hard days. Still scars. But there was something more powerful. There was love, there was presence. There was the certainty that never again would Emma be alone. And that, Robert finally understood, was all that truly mattered.